Please welcome Keld Jensen.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to give a short presentation. I'm going to talk about success in negotiation. And obviously, a lot of different things can define success in negotiation, but I have chosen to pick a specific real-life negotiation from one of my clients. And this negotiation is a negotiation that happened just a year ago, and it is my client negotiating with a retail chain, a buyer. Now, my client is, as you can see in the slide, is producing packaging for the food industry. And they have an existing contract with this buyer, a big retail chain in Europe that they've been working together for a long time. But what happened in this case was that the buyer of this retail chain came to my client and said, hey, do you know what? We want a price reduction of 9%. And in this case, 9%, as you can see on the screen, is obviously equal to 2,250,000 since the annual contract value is 9 million. Now, this is obviously a tough negotiation, and typically this would end up in a zero-sum negotiation, because what happens here is that my client really had three choices, right? They can either accept to reduce the price by 9%. That means they would lose 9% and the retail chain would win 9%. That's a zero-sum game. My progress is happening at your expense. They could start arguing, become combative, and not accepting that they should do that, so avoid concession. That will still be zero-sum. Or they could do as they actually chose to do, try something differently and suggest to move into SMARTnership. So they did exactly that, and the retail chain actually accepted reopening the old contract that was 6 years old just to take a look at the variables that was negotiated back then. And the aim was to try and identify asymmetric value, what I in my world call negotiation economics, negoeconomics. And what they identified in the existing contract was there was basically 6 variables that could potentially carry some value. One of them was delivery, because in the existing contract, it was stated that they should deliver at 16 different locations every second week. It was agreed in the existing contract that the warehousing was the responsibility of the supplier. Terms of payment was a line of credit of 65 days. The warranty was a 3-year warranty period on all product delivered. The lid side has been fixed for many years. It hasn't changed, whatever. And all our orders was just in time. That means it was just an email that popped in, and then they should respond based on that email. So there was no long-term planning. What they decided to do instead was trying to see, is there any alternative way that we could deal with this? And what they did was actually try and see if there was negoeconomics. And negoeconomic, very briefly, is the asymmetric value between two parties. So that is basically the difference between my value and your cost, or your value and my cost. Remember one thing, ladies and gentlemen, why do two organizations negotiate with each other? They negotiate with each other with only one purpose: to create and distribute value. I repeat, to create and distribute value. It's not a game about being smart or figuring out how can we analyze and read the counterpart and what is the body language, are they lying right now? It's really a puzzle that we need to put together to create and distribute value. So what they did in this case was they sat down and then they took a look at, is it possible to create some value here? And what they actually discovered was that first variable, if we change the lid, that will generate a savings to the supplier, but would create a cost to the buyer. I'm getting back to the solution in a second. Changing from just in time to long-term planning would again generate asymmetric value between the two parties. Reducing the warranty from 3 to 1 year would create a savings for the supplier, my client, but would generate an additional risk to the buyer that was capitalized as well. Moving the warehouse, the responsibility from the supplier to the buyer, would actually generate an asymmetric value as well. And by changing delivery from 16 location to 1, my client would save quite a lot of money. It would put an additional cost to the buyer, obviously. And by delivering not twice, but once every month, again, the supplier, my client, would save some money. And changing terms of payment from a line of credit from 65 days to cash at delivery, again, would create an asymmetric value. Now, here comes the almost Disney fairy tale ending. Because what happened in this case was the two parties created a mutual value, which is free money, of $4,198,000. Now, what my client said to the buyer was, you requested $2,250,000. Here you go. Here they are. Isn't that exciting? Now, the difference between the $4,198,000 and the 2,250,000, we negotiate on how to split that. So the parties sat down and then negotiated a split of that. So what actually happened in this case was that my client left this negotiation with an additional profit as well. Now, what was it that happened here? And I don't want to kill you guys with the spreadsheet, but just illustrating this very quickly, as you can see. What happened in this negotiation was that the two parties, they found all these variables, the 6 variables I just shared with you guys, and they capitalized all of them. So as you can see in the screen right now, by changing delivery from 16 location to 1, we generate a savings to the supplier, my client, of $580,000. But we generated a cost to the buyer of $140,000 because they had internal logistical expenses they have to cover. But I think we can all agree that the mutual value, the asymmetric value, negotiation economics, is obviously the difference here, $440,000. I don't want to go through all of them, but just mentioning the next one. Delivering once a month instead of twice a month would save my client an enormous amount of $260,000, but would generate a cost to the buyer of $80,000, since again, they have to handle internal logistics. We created a mutual value, once again, that could be split between the two parties. You can just add up the math, and that was how we ended up with $4,198,000. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this example here can be repeated over and over again in many, many, many different negotiations where the parties can identify and capitalize that difference. That is the award-winning mathematical model I coined, called negotiation economics, necroeconomics. Let me just spend 1 second advertising my brand new book, Negotiation, The Elements of Negotiation, which have received incredibly good reviews from everybody. I'm very humble about it. And I spend a lot of time talking about 103 elements that I have identified through this study in more than 30 years, looking at 35,000 negotiations globally. What is it that separates the great negotiator from the good negotiator, and the good negotiator from the horrible negotiator? I hope this was a quick look into the potential of values in negotiation, and how you can really create success at one side without the counterpart is paying, and how both parties in reality can actually walk away being a winner in this case. Thank you so much for listening. Hope it was useful, and I hope to see you soon once again. Thank you so much.